So I'm joined here today by Tim Follin, who's played sort of many different roles in the video game industry. Some people know him as a video game music composer for lots of retro games. Other people, though, might know him as creating the FMVs Contradiction, Spot the Liar, and Dead of Night. I have loved both of those FMVs. I thought they were amazing, really great fun to play. I'm very excited to find out what he's working on now as well. But Tim, hi, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
So this is going to be kind of just a general chat about your work. I won't say career because I know you don't like it to be referred to as that.
It's too random for a career, isn't it? It's just, yeah. I think you have to have I don't know, a plan for a career, don't you? I've never had a plan, so.
Okay, all right, we'll get to that. We'll get to bits of that. But I mean, so this is kind of a very basic question in that instance. But just how you started off making music for games, but how did you get into doing that? I know you started very young, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, really, I was just a geek. I started off with a ZX Spectrum, coding that. My brother had, older brother, one of my older brothers had, the oldest of my older brothers, I should say, had a
How many brothers
Spectrum.
do you have?
Two, I
Okay.
got two. And he got a Spectrum, and I think I got a ZX81 because it was cheaper. And then I think the following Christmas, I got a Spectrum. So I was still at school. And I just got kind of into the programming side of it. And so I kind of always had this thing where I was fascinated with sound and music. Sound really, and I think what happened was I just had to go at programming sound routines, machine code, which is like the lowest level kind of code you can do on the Spectrum to make it do as much as you can. And I kind of figured out how to, I don't know, I think I had sort of a fairly intuitive sense of how to create sound, and I kind of thought, I bet I can do that. You know what I mean? I just, when you sort of have a sense of you understand how something works, so you just want to have a go at trying it, and so I had to go at doing that and program some sound routines. And because my brother was actually writing the games at that point, obviously he just said, okay, you can do me a few tunes for my game, so I kind of did. The first couple of tunes I did were just little ditties, for his games.
Was this on the Spectrum? This was
On the Spectrum, yeah. So then he got a job actually, no, the first thing that happened was he got a freelance job converting a game called The Sentinel, which was a really kind of famous BBC micro game, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a big game. Well, not a big game, as big as games got back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big, but it was quite a famous game, and he did the conversion to the Spectrum. And it had this kind of 4-channel music that was originally on the BBC Micro. And I just figured out how to do a kind of multi-channel sound routine on the Spectrum, because obviously it was only really capable of doing, making beeping noises. So I kind of figured out how to code a 4-channel routine and more or less copy the music, I think, from the original BBC Micro. But then what happened was, because Mike, my older brother, got a job then at a place called Software Creations in Manchester, then he basically said to yeah. So he basically got me the job there, more or less. He just said to his boss, look, my brother does sound, and music. But the strange thing was the music side of it was actually kind of really a kind of afterthought, really. Primarily I was sort of into kind of sound and programming, so it was kind of music kind of came separate. Obviously I was into music, but it wasn't my primary thing, really. Having said that, I did go to music college for a year, so I was kind of, obviously new music was an important thing, for me, but it was more about kind of the combination of music and the tech side of it as well. I was kind of into,
which I guess you got to work with quite a lot in terms of at Software Creations, because you were having to deal with I'm guessing technology changing quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of gave up programming pretty much straight away, to be honest, as soon as I got to Manchester, because as soon as I got to software creations, it was, I could program Z80, which is the the Zilog chip that the Spectrum uses, but I didn't know anything about 6502, which was what the Commodore 64 used, and a lot of other. I think the NES used that as well. I'm not sure actually. Thinking about it, I'm not sure if the NES does use that, but anyway, I didn't know how to code basically beyond the Spectrum, and so what happened was that the boss there put me, got me working with the programmers, in-house programmers, and together we wrote the music drivers then that I used for the rest of the time at Software Creations then.
And
So yeah,
in terms
sorry.
of, that jump from, doing bits and bobs for friends and your brothers and things like that, and then
Yeah.
going straight into a company, what was that like? And, did you have sort of free reign to do what you wanted?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was kind of what Software Creations basically thrived on. Well, say thrived. They only did conversions, arcade conversions. Initially, they started to do more original stuff later on, but initially it was all, um, arcade conversion stuff. So those arcade machine, the original arcade games already had music. So what
Yeah.
I was kind of obliged to kind of take the music from the arcade machine just to kind of really appease the, license holder, I think. But I think the boss, Richard, never actually said to me, copy this stuff. He basically said, here's the original music. Do what you want, really. So
Okay.
you kind of, I'm not sure how much, how important it was that I was copying the stuff or not, to be honest, because but what I ended up doing is taking kind of little bits of the original arcade music and kind of basing my own tunes on those.
Yeah.
So I kind of did a bit of everything really, because I didn't, I think I probably did do some authentic, faithful copies of the tunes, but a lot of the time I just did my own thing really.
Uh,
Um,
and I want to point people to one piece of music which I know a lot of people talk about, and this is your music for Pictionary,
oh yeah,
the NES game, which a lot of people. I'm going to play a short little clip of this, and then I'd be interested to know kind of how, were you given any kind of brief for this, or anyway, I'll ask you the question, but I'll play a very short clip of it just so people who haven't heard it can get a kind of idea of a little bit what it sounded like. And actually, I can. Hopefully, you can hear it. Oh, thank you, Nikki, for that. Yeah. You probably won't be able to hear this unless you've got the stream up as well, so I'm not going to leave it for too long. But anyway, you know what it sounds like. You made it.
yeah.
And let's just skip forward a little bit. So anyway, I'll leave that there. But as Nikki has put a full clip of it there, I mean, there's so much going on in that one theme music. It's amazing, and I think a lot of people, you see it in the comments even now. But then that must have been quite surprised to hear that for what is essentially a board game. And I just want to know, like, where so were you
Why?
given
You
any
want to
brief
know
for
why?
this? Come on, tell me about it.
No, I mean, this is the strange thing. Back then, it was kind of it was literally do some music for that.
Yeah.
We're doing Pictionary.
Which is
Do
quite vague, really, because what do
Oh
you do
yeah.
for Pictionary?
Well, exactly. And I think that was I think we kind of did. I do remember having a kind of discussion about it beforehand and saying, what do you do for a drawing game? This doesn't, it's just nonsense to have music to this. But yeah, I mean, what I did, well, again, it just shows you that, I had complete free reign to just do whatever came to into my head, really. And I think I used a few, I think between games, I did sort of mess around and create some music just as sort of experimental, ideas. And I think what happened with Pictionary was, I basically just took some of those tunes to start with, and then thought, well, okay, I'll write some more now in that vein, which
Yeah.
just was completely unrelated to the game. It had nothing to do with the game at all.
Well, that's the
But
thing,
there you
because
go.
were you ever sort of shown concepts? When someone said, "Oh, we
It was
want to make," just take us through, I guess, a process. If someone said, "Hey, we want you to make music for this game," were you just kind of like,
yeah. No, I mean, honestly, the first time I remember that happening was when we did a game called Solstice on the NES. and Solstice was an in-house original game. It was the first game that we'd done as an original. I think maybe because of that, and because I knew the designer very well, so I kind of I think for the first time on that game, I kind of thought maybe this should match the game. You know what I mean? That's not necessarily true, because I did Ghouls and Ghosts, and I kind of had a vague concept of the idea that it was kind of, the Ghouls and Ghosts started in a churchyard, so I kind of had this gothic vibe I was trying to
Yeah.
put into the music, but it was as vague as that. It wasn't really any more than just a general, very vague kind of atmosphere that I was kind of basing everything on. I think what happened was as time went on, and much later on, I was getting a lot more instruction about what to do, and it got less and less interesting to me, the whole process, because of that. So
for you,
yeah.
I guess, was it more about just seeing what you could create and less about the game? Almost, it was just about
Yeah, pretty much. This is the silly thing, now if I was as we'll probably go on to, if I'm writing a game, creating a game now, it's obviously to me, the soundtrack is absolutely crucial, so I know full well what it's like to be on the other side of that, now. And I would never hire me, you know what I mean? Not in a million years, to do to do music, but fortunately, I kind of, because I'm on both sides now, I kind of I can do the music that I know I need,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
back then, no. And I always found it really difficult to do. There are exceptions to that, I suppose. I want to, I did music for later on some SNES games. I remember doing music for a game called Equinox on the SNES, which was I kind of saw that was a kind of follow-up to Solstice, so I kind of knew that there was more room for sort of creating more atmospheric sort of things in that.
Yeah.
So I kind of hopefully that did fit the game more than perhaps earlier stuff I did, but and then much later on I was doing Starsky and Hutch and things like that, which kind of I knew pretty much. I had pretty much free reign on that as well. But it was because it was all within a certain genre, sort of whatever genre that would be, jazz funk, I suppose, isn't it? So it kind of got more prescriptive as time went on, but
well, we've got
there you go.
lots of people in the chat are fans. Gaz Knight says, Tim, I still love your soundtrack from Ghouls and
Block, yeah.
Ghosts on the Amiga.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Also, the Plock soundtrack. Spiderland also says the Ghouls and Ghosts title music on the Commodore 64. Probably my fave SID tune. So there you go. Does it feel sort of I don't know.
Oh, it's surreal.
Yeah.
It's surreal, yeah, because it's I don't know. I think it is surreal because it's great, obviously, if people I'm just reading these comments now.
Yeah.
I kind of just it's just surreal because it's kind of, I don't know. I kind of always did this stuff in my own little bubble. I kind of didn't really think about anyone listening to it. Really, I've never really kind of. That's true of even the games I've mentioned. It's kind of, I don't really think about in terms of trying to create something that I know people will like. It's more a case of, I kind of just have to rely on the fact that if I kind of like it, then hopefully other people will too. It's kind of. It's like that, because I just can't do it another way. I can't, it's the only way I know how to do it, basically. It's not kind of hopefully not an arrogant thing. I don't think, I kind of do it, without any care about what people do. Obviously, it matters a lot, that people enjoy it and like it, but I can't create things with that in mind because it just completely destroys the process for me. I kind of have to just trust myself and get on with it. I think I try and make stuff that I would enjoy, if you see what I mean. So I kind of, that's the basis of it, and if hopefully by that process, other people will enjoy it.
What was their reaction with Pictionary? Were they just like, yeah, great, brilliant? And
no, I don't remember. I don't remember having any feedback at all. And in fact, I don't remember getting any feedback from anyone at Software Creations. The closest I remember getting really was a few magazine reviews I think we had at the time, but that was only earlier on. I think that was for the Commodore 64 stuff. NES stuff now, I have no recollection at all. It was a complete shock when I finally got the internet, after all of this, and discovered all this kind of, yeah,
So at the
all
time,
this.
you didn't know that people like really dug like the soundtracks or
No,
anything.
not at all. No, I had no clue. I mean, honestly, I remember getting a few emails when initially and thinking, oh, wow, some people kind of, I was surprised that people remembered it. And that
Yeah.
was in the kind of 2000, around the millennium, sort of thing, around 2000, when I started getting emails and thinking back then, wow, how can they remember that after all these years, and we're sort of 20 years on from that now, aren't we? So, yeah, frightening, but it's cool.
Do you have a favorite soundtrack? I'm sure you do that you made, or favorite theme or song.
I don't know, really. I can't think of.
I mean, there were many. To be fair, a lot of people I
Well,
think
yeah,
like the Silver Surfer. I know is
Silver
quite.
Surfer. I kind of liked. You see, I did some stuff for the Genesis, the Sega Genesis one, because what happened was I left Software Creations
Yes.
and went to work for a company called Malibu Interactive, which was a very short-lived thing. And I think I did. What happened was we did some stuff for all the Sega Genesis for games that never got released. One of them was Time Tracks, and I actually kind of look back on that stuff and think I actually prefer some of that stuff to any of the stuff I did on the NES or the SNES actually. But it was never released, so no one's ever heard it. But never mind.
That's a shame.
Yeah, SNES wise, I don't know. I enjoy Plock, I
Yeah, I mean,
enjoyed
a
some
lot
of
of
the Plock stuff.
people that that guitar set it basically sounds like it's just a real guitar that you're using on that. It sounds
Well,
amazing, but yeah.
I think that the thing is with the Plock stuff that that certainly that title tune was musically it's not the most adventurous, you know what I mean? It's pretty
Sure.
much a sort of it's what do you call it? A blues standard, really,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's kind of a standard thing. But it was kind of a technical exercise, and I think that's always underpinned all the chip music I did. Was always a kind of underneath it was what kind of kept me going with it. Really was the kind of what can I do technically, to keep me interested in this sort of thing, rather than musically, if you see what I mean. But that's probably just because that's just yeah. I would think really. I think I'm primarily a kind of more of a geek than a musician, really.
Right. Yeah.
So
It could be
there
both.
you go. You could be both. Musicians are geeks, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say
There
I've
you
met
go.
quite a few musicians in there, mostly geeks. Do you, I mean, we'll move on to talk a bit about kind of how you sort of moved out of composing and went on to create Baggy Cat. But I was just interested. I don't know. Would you have an interest in listening to kind of other music, film? Sorry, video game soundtracks now, as in,
Yeah,
are
I
you
listen
interested in
to
that kind
stuff.
of thing?
Yeah.
I just interested mainly asking because I know a lot of people I've seen in your comments saying, "Oh, it'd be great if Tim Follin met, Toby Fox from Undertale because Toby Fox makes a lot of his own music as well,
Yeah.
composing." And I'm just interested. Are you still interested in that kind of vein at all, or is it kind of gone for you a little bit?
As I mean, I'd say, well, I do my own music for
Yes.
the games, but as regards, I mean, I don't know. The problem is I just have so little time to do anything these days that I
Yeah.
kind of don't even have the time to do my own thing these days. So
Yeah.
it's not like I kind of have. I mean, at the moment, I seem to be kind of finding time at sort of, 11 o'clock until about 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning or something. And that
I
seems to be
can
like,
relate.
yeah, but it's, you know, right at the moment, I'm just absorbed with, I'm using every spare hour I've got basically to work on the project I'm doing at the moment. I know you didn't want to get to that
I
until
mean,
we've
I don't
covered
mind. We
everything else,
can.
but
Thank you for thinking of me, but I don't mind.
yeah.
It doesn't. We can do it in any order. It's your interview.
Um, so yeah, I would say, yeah, I kind of, in theory, yeah, I just don't have the time. That's the
Yeah.
bottom line, Yeah. That's
I was
always
just
been the
wondering,
case, though.
is there any sort of video game composers you've heard that you've liked the sound of
Oh, I
more
like
recently?
loads of stuff. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of, I mean, obviously, I don't even consider myself in the same league, though. That's the thing as most game composers these days. I mean, I knew, um, Richard Jakes, who was a game composer, and he was kind of watching him work was kind of partly the reason why I kind of knew how to get out of music, to be honest, because he was kind of so prolific and competent, and he was doing orchestral scores all the time for games and stuff, and flying out to Prague and recording orchestras there, and organizing multi-tracked, just incredibly complex stuff, and I kind of thought, there's just no way I can do that, it's just not me at all. I don't have that musical formal training at all. I don't have, I think the necessary skills really to fall back on to do that professionally, So I kind of, I was really winging it all the way through the sort of up until the last things I did really. You know what I mean? I kind of, as I say, it all started from I was more of a technical person really, and I was kind of more interested in that side of it initially. And music was a kind of, something that sort of sat on top of that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I've never really thought of myself as a kind of professional musician really. Say when I see other people, I spoke recently. I don't know if this is like blowing me on trumpet now. There was a guy that recently I was trying to and form my words properly. ADHD, sorry. This is.
I was going to say, Tim, I recognise some signs, but I didn't want to say. But yes, go on.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Oh well, yeah. I don't have the official diagnosis, but
who does?
I've got. Yeah, exactly right. Well, anyway, my son does actually, but so what happened was last year, 21? Was it? I can't remember now if it was last year. Yeah, it was last year. There was a gaming prom. I don't know if you saw that. There was the BBC proms that they do every year.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so they did a gaming prom, and they asked a composer called Matt Rogers. I just had a double take then, Matt Rogers. I'm just gonna. Sorry, I'm just checking that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm sorry, I can't correct you. I don't know.
Matt Rogers, yeah, sorry, it just went out of my head then. I know it's Matt Rogers, yeah. He was they asked Matt Rogers, who was a composer I didn't know about at the time, to do a piece that represented sort of 8-bit music.
Oh, cool.
And he remembered a piece I did for the Spectrum called Kronos. And so he did an orchestral version he did his own sort of an orchestral version of the Spectrum loading screen, and then he did basically that goes into kind of an orchestral version of Kronos, the tune, my tune. And he obviously called me to ask me initially permission to do it, which of course I'm going to give him permission. I'm not going to say no, you can't. But and then so he was great, and it's probably still on BBC iPlayer actually. You can probably find it still. And so after speaking to him though, I kind of brought home just how professional the world is, how unprofessional I was, and how I was totally blagging it really when I look back now, I mean, it's really nice that people remember the stuff, I did and everything, but I remember the last game I did was Lemmings.
Oh, really?
For the PSP. Yeah, it was kind of because they've done loads of versions of Lemmings. It was the PSP version in 2000 and something, 3 or something. And that was the last thing I did. I remember sort of, I was getting a few £100 a tune sort of thing, and having to do loads more. I think I did more music for that game than I'd done for any previous game, and I probably got paid a quarter of what I'd been paid for the previous game. And it was that point where I just thought, what, this is, it's not happening. You know what I mean? I need to do something else.
Yeah.
And so, I quit that, and I pursued my other interest, which was kind of film and TV, filmmaking. So I kind of made a couple of short films on a tiny budget, and managed to get my foot in the door of a local TV company they were just setting up an advertising department, making TV ads. And I managed to wing my way into a job doing that. so I kind of thought that was, and it was such a relief really, because I was suddenly getting, I was earning a lot more money for a start,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, and that's what I kind of ended up doing for the next how many X years? And I got the job in about 2006. So, and I did that for at least, I did it until a few years ago, really. I was still doing that. So,
Toast Monster actually in the chat asks, have you made any ad jingles we might recognise?
well, I did kind of quite a lot, because obviously when I started at this company, what happened was that folded in 2010, I think, 2010. And we started, well, I kind of jointly started a company called ABF Pictures with Matt and Paul and two friends, who I used to work with at Channel M, which was the original TV station.
Yes,
And
I remember it. Yeah.
yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am
So,
from Manchester, so yeah, I do. Yeah.
oh right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So short-lived, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah. But the good thing about that was that we were kind of in our own little bubble, actually making the adverts. So we could make, a sort of offshoot of the Channel M thing was that we were making adverts for, some quite big companies at that point.
Right. Okay. Oh,
And
cool.
so that, yeah, and so that ended up, three of us going off and forming a company to do that. And that obviously Matt, the main, I would say Matt was more or less the guy that was more adept at knew more about advertising than I did, certainly. And he obviously knew that I was, formerly a composer, so he said, "Oh, can you, I can't remember what the first thing I did was, but obviously as soon as that became known, I ended up doing music for adverts. Yeah, so I did the advert tunes for quite a few ads, Channel M and
Okay.
ABF ads. Yeah,
Oh, cool.
but none of them. I don't think you'd know any of them.
No, I was going to say I didn't
Unfortunately,
actually watch Channel M. Sorry.
no, I know no one did. That was why I did.
Yeah.
But-
I knew of it, but yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I did. Well, the thing is, we did a lot of adverts for, local businesses at
Yeah.
Channel, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did when we at ABF we did some quite big adverts. We did adverts for Virgin
Right. Okay. Yeah.
and Vistaprint. Do you remember Vistaprint? They were a business card
Don't think I do. No.
maker. So at the time they were like a big company. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
all they did was make business cards, and I don't know anyone that's ever used a business card. So I mean,
No.
really, but that's what they did. But they did do a lot of, they were quite a big company at the time, and so I used to do the music for them.
Oh, cool.
But nothing, not really. I wouldn't remember any of this
Sure.
stuff really. So,
But then,
yeah.
how did you go from that then to back into sort of the video game industry and making FMVs? I'm guessing it sounds like you kind of had an interest in film. So was
Yeah.
that part of it really, or how did it?
Yeah, pretty much.
happen?
It was that was it really. It was kind of I did well. Contradiction, which was the first thing we did, was really what kind of came out of an idea that I had with Jeff, who was my the nearest brother in age, who I used to compose with. So me and Jeff were both working at Software Creations and Malibu, together, writing music together. And we had this idea in the sort of after Malibu folded and between, I think we were both in a bit of a no man's land at that time. And I was kind of struggling with freelance work. Jeff went into teaching actually eventually. But there's a few years there where we didn't really know what to do, and we had some ideas. I think initially most of the team from Malibu had this idea of creating a game, and we went to I don't know if you remember Signosis. That was a games company based in Liverpool in the 90s, and they were we pitched an idea to Signosis, and I think that fell through straight away. But after that, we kind of disbanded, and then me and Jeff sort of had this vague idea for a audio-based adventure game that would be just purely audio, just so really we could do music and sound and all the rest of it and do that kind of thing. But this is kind of pre-iPhone age, you know what I mean? So it kind of, we didn't really have any way of, there was no medium for that to happen in other than PC, So then what happened was we basically shelved the idea.
Yeah.
And we kind of Jeff, as I went into teaching, I was doing different things. But then, yeah, I mean, it was actually when the iPad came out, it was kind of, I remember looking at the iPad thinking this would be ideal for that thing we were talking about, only with video. And obviously, by that point, I'd been shooting video. I was actually, at ABF, I was more or less the DP, because I think
Right.
we all
Okay.
sort of, we all specialized, so Matt was kind of more the creative sort of picture and, that kind of side, and Paul was more kind of on the post-production sort of side, and I was kind of more on the shooting and DPing side of it. That was where we found our kind of strengths.
Yeah.
So, so because I had that kind of background in shooting, I kind of thought, okay, I can probably do this. The Blackmagic camera had just been launched, which was kind of a great, new kind of cinema-like picture quality on it. This camera, was kind of people were using that a lot at the time, and I kind of used that and thought, okay, so how can I do this? How can I create an iPad game using video that's based around this adventure game mystery thing that we had, I had sort of worked on previously, and yeah, Contradiction was like a result of that, basically. Just I wrote a script. I knew I had the basic concept of the Contradiction thing. That we kind of fleshed that out years prior to that. But so I went back and, as I wrote a script, and then we kind of figured out how to shoot it. And I got in touch with John Guyler, who was someone that I've met through Matt, I was telling you about, who was at ABF. He just used to work with John Guyler and got him a few acting jobs and that kind of thing. And John more or less then said, "Oh, well, I can get you a lot of actors." So he kind of went around and phoned people he knew and got some actors, and got a lot of people he just wanted to be in it himself, regardless of what I wanted, like Paul Darrow,
Yes. Yeah.
But it was a great actor, isn't he, Paul Darrow?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of can't
He's
complain.
fantastic in that game. Yeah.
Yeah, and you wouldn't believe how little clue he had about the script either.
Go on.
Honestly, it's sign of a professional that he could basically, he didn't know, he didn't read, he glanced through the script.
Yeah.
And when I first emailed him the script, his immediate response was, "I'm sorry, I can't do this. It's far too much stuff." And I kind of said, "Look, you don't need to remember this. You can just read it on the set.
Yeah.
You can just come and sit down, have the script in front of you, just read it out. Just do it there and then." And I think John spoke to him and eventually he agreed to do it. And yeah, there are so many takes in there where I don't know if you can see he's holding his glasses, which
Yeah.
are his reading glasses, so he can read the script. And so he's literally, most of those takes are, he's just literally like 3-4 frames before the cut, dropped his glasses out of the shot and said the line that he's just read. And then the glasses are back on for the next line. You know what I mean? So but he was such a professional, he could just deliver it as if he knew exactly what he was saying. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And but it's just the magic of TV, isn't it? The fact that actors can do that.
Where
Oh,
did
goodness.
the idea come from? Was it you just kind of were thinking it would be a good sort of basis to have a sort of detective, or where did the kind of sleuthing element come from?
Yeah, this is the thing. It wasn't actually going to. Our original idea wasn't like that at all. It wasn't a detective or anything. It was just a mystery. It's kind of you are the player sort of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
The original idea, and you had to figure out what was going on. But when I came to do Contradiction, I realised that if I'm going to have video, there are two ways of doing it. One would be to have everything point of view, so you stare at the people that you're interviewing, and it just felt wrong to me that it just felt like it was going to be the cheese level would have gone over that threshold of kind of
And it's quite a high threshold in that game.
yeah exactly so excuse me, so I kind of thought, okay, so if I have the detective in thing, then at least I can shoot this as if it's a drama, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
I can have a two shot sort of thing, and I can do that kind of thing, and it'll feel more natural, and you'll be able to kind of have Jenks have a fluid conversation with someone, which obviously wouldn't happen if it was, people just staring at the camera.
Yeah.
So yeah.
when I spoke, I've also spoken to Rupert Booth about his kind of roles of Contradiction, but also what he's working on now. I was very interested to hear. I think he must have gone through Robert, maybe, but he sort of. I don't think he even put himself forward for the role as Jenks, but somehow got cast for it. Do you remember seeing? I don't know whether it was some film of him, or did you just see his picture and decide? That's
Who's that? Sorry,
Jenks.
I just missed
Sorry,
you. What
Rupert
you
Booth,
Rupert?
aka
No, that
Jenks.
was Rupert was John's friend
Right.
basically. So
Okay, I thought that
all
might
that
be the
happened is,
case.
yeah. John found Rupert straight away. He just sort of called Rupert and said, "Look, Rupert, do you want to be do you want to be in this game?"
Yeah.
And I just went with John's advice basically. I mean, I think like I know Rupert was delighted to get the part, but it was kind of more a case, I think, from my point of view of John recommended him. I didn't really know anything about Rupert at that point. I'd never met him, so I didn't know what he was going to be like at all. So a case of giving him the lead part was more a case of just John says he's give him the part. So I did. I didn't do any casting. I mean, we couldn't afford it. We
No,
didn't
I
have
guess not. No,
couldn't
that's fair
afford to do
enough.
anything really. So I was kind of beholden really to John's advice on that. But obviously, as soon as we started working with Rupert, I kind of thought, oh wow, he's kind of, and Rupert was properly professional. Just really, I'd say in a way, Rupert was the probably the only one of the cast really that fully got it. He
Right.
fully understood what was happening, like what he had to do essentially, how it would work, and everything. Totally got it, yeah, straight away. And from a technical point of view, he was absolutely bang on all the time. Never. I don't even remember him slipping up. Even saying, you know what I mean. He was
Yeah.
just completely professional the whole time. So I was very glad that Rupert was Jenks in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so funny that it just kind of happened like that, because you
Yeah.
would have imagined it's just always made for it. It just seems to work really well.
Well, probably John knew that,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
In terms of, I guess, like the the acting in the game is incredible, because it like you said, there is a kind of cheese factor. There is a sort of almost overacting, but not, because it's got that kind of vision to it. I guess that it's all kind of mysterious and quite sort of
Yeah.
camp. Camp is the word.
Yeah.
Was that the vision you had in your head to start with? Is that how you wanted? Yeah.
Do you know what? I didn't
No.
have a clear vision when we started, even right up until starting filming. I think I was still flitting between thinking this is just silly and actually this could be more serious. And you know what I mean? And it was right in between the whole time, until we started filming. And I think as soon as we started filming, as soon as I saw Jenks, as soon as I saw Rupert, the way Rupert was playing Jenks, it was kind of clear from that point on that that there was probably going to be camper and a little bit more silly than I was probably originally thinking.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't have any great, I still, when we did Contradiction, I was still thinking of it as kind of, I'll just make something as a demo almost to see, this is just an experiment to see whether it works or not. I didn't have any great vision for it really. The vision I had when writing it, I think also kind of evaporated because I had a previous story which I kind of started writing and then I kind of ditched basically and I gave up with and started again. And so I used a lot of the themes from that previous story and to create this new story, which is why it's as it is. So there are all these hints to this other thing going on, which never actually resolve. And the reason for that was because it was a different story basically
Right.
that came from, So I had this longer story that was all to do with, I mean, I think I had things like organ harvesting and things like this and weird stuff going on in the original story. But then when I came to realize that, if I'm going to do this, it's going to have to be trimmed down. It's going to have to be quite a short thing. And as it is, it's still quite a long game, isn't it, really? But I kind of thought of it as a much cut down version, of what it was. But it did mean that I kind of had to do this thing where I was going to give a spoiler away then, but the killer is who they are.
Right, yes, yeah. I mean,
Yes,
I've played it, so don't worry, but I guess I
yeah,
appreciate you not spoiling it, yeah, in case
yeah. In
people
case,
haven't.
just in
Yeah,
case,
thank yeah,
yeah,
that's worth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not that anyone will, but there you go. But it was kind of, yeah, it, I mean, there were things like, the thing that became a bit of a meme when we first put Contradiction out, which is 2015 now, it came out a long time ago, and there was a bit of a meme thing with Jenks and his rock hands. He's have you
Yeah,
seen
if
this
I
sort of
do
thing? Doing that.
this,
Yeah, if you do that, exactly. And that was an example of me just thinking, this is camp, so I'm gonna. Because originally that was it was had a more sort of subtle thing. It was going to be your three little fingers, and so it was kind of going to be this odd sign that they did. And as soon as we kind of came to it, I just thought, yeah, but that's three fingers. You can do the rock sign, can't you? And it's just funnier. So I kind of went with that. I just thought, what's the funniest way of doing this? We'll just have him do that instead of, which is ridiculous. But that's, I kind of that was kind of where I was at headwise with it. I kind of thought it was all a bit silly, really,
yeah.
and a bit camp, and I kind of thought, well, it doesn't matter, but it is what it is now, isn't it? So
Yeah, well, I think as Hings in the chat says, I think that's part of the magic. That's why people love it so much because it did have this kind of like sort of silly aspect to it, but then it's
yeah,
also this woman has been, murdered and so all this kind of darkness. So there was a lot of
yeah,
twists
yeah.
and
It was dark
turns.
and silly.
Yeah,
It's more. I mean, I think probably if the League of Gentlemen hadn't been out, you know what I mean, I might have gone in a different direction. But
yes,
you know what I mean. That's an example, isn't it, of something that's dark,
I
but
can.
it's out and out comedy. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
I could see that quite well actually. As a, do you have? I don't know if you've got like a favorite scene from it. I know
Favorite scene.
when I was
I
speaking to
actually,
Rupert. Yeah, go on. Sorry, yeah.
no, sorry, go on, you
Oh,
was-
all I was going to say is when I was speaking to Rupert, he said any with Paul Darrow because they were
Well,
just
yeah,
really
all the Paul
interesting.
Darrow
But yeah,
stuff. Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. No, my favorite scene was always Lisa's scene,
yeah.
But it's actually the most serious as well, isn't it? That scene, it's sort of the darkest,
Mm.
and it was actually the very first scene we shot in
Okay.
the whole thing. So that was the very first thing. I had no idea how Rupert was going to play it until I saw how he played it with in the Lisa scene
Yeah.
with Ellie, and so suddenly I saw that and I kind of thought, well, this is like Ellie played it really serious and really straight, and yet Rupert was kind of this was Jegs, effectively,
Yeah.
and I think what happened is I wouldn't say it was all downhill after that. What happened was we went on to shoot. I can't remember what the next thing we shot was. I honestly can't remember now what the schedule was, but it was. But after that, yeah, it became a lot more kind of this is kind of okay, it's a bit camp.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, we shot. I just honestly can't remember what we shot
I
next.
mean, it was
But
quite a long time ago, so it's fair
yeah, it
enough.
was. Yeah, 2014 we shot it. Yeah, so it's getting on for 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is
which is,
nuts.
but it's must again
Mm.
another thing you've made that people are still talking about now, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is bizarre, isn't it? There you go.
But I've got,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to ask you this before we go on to At Dead of Night. And I need to know, will there ever be a contradiction to
Contradiction
Tim?
sequel.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, the problem is that the original story was hacked from a sort of previous story,
Mm.
and if I went through probably several, not several years, I guess, but I mean at least a couple of years of really thinking, how do I do a sequel to Contradiction now? Because it's not like there is a fully formed story, there. It's more like there are bits and pieces. There are sort of offcuts lying on the sort of workshop floor, you know what I mean, type of thing of bits of story that I could cobble together to make sense of what happened. Because unfortunately, I think the explanation for what was going on doesn't what I found anyway when I was trying to write a sequel is what was really what am I trying to say? The explanation of what was going on doesn't extend that far, if you see what I mean. There's not a lot to it, and so I kind of had to think, well, okay, so if I'm going to have, you know, more kind of delving into what Atlas was really about. It
Yeah.
doesn't go that far before you realize what Atlas is about, and that's
Okay.
the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see.
So I kind of thought, well, what do I do? So I really tried to extrapolate it into something longer that would, and I just kept hitting brick walls with it. And I kind of that was partly one of the reasons why I kind of thought, I'm just going to do a completely different thing with because my kids were quite young at that time, and they were playing Five Nights at Freddy's and that kind of thing, those horror games. And I kind of thought, you know what, I'm just going to do a silly game for the kids here. I'm not going to try too hard with this, thinking that I could create something in maybe a year, and it actually took me, God, how many years? I don't know, frightening amount of time before I actually ended up with a finished game, Dead of Night. Only came out in I think I put it out at the end of 2020, didn't I? Just before Christmas. So it was sort of came alive last year, 21. Yeah. Sorry, not last year, 2021, and then but until I'd say from 2015, since Contradiction came out, I had a couple of years of not really knowing what I was doing. And then I think I've got early demos of it, Dead of Night, from 2016, very first thing, and 2017 I've got a few. And I filmed stuff for it, Dead of Night, in 2017 and 2019. Because what happened was I did a lot of filming in 2017 for kind of what I decided was going to be at Dead of Night, but I had a very vague idea at that point as to how it was exactly going to work. And then after a couple of years of working on it, it took me just forever to comp all that stuff together.
I can imagine.
And by that point, I eventually kind of figured out what it needed, and I realized it needed that. Initially I had this, with Dead of Night, I had this idea of it being a ghost hunt. So it was originally going to be just about hunting ghosts and ghosts appearing, that kind of thing. And then I kind of realized that there wasn't enough threat to it. I kind of had more of I was a big The Shining fan.
I was going to say, so surely that was an inspiration in it.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So I was thinking about, Jack Nicholson in The Shining, thinking, well, okay, this is what I need. I need a figure that's going to kind of be an axe wielding, figure that will provide the tension for this. It just needs, it was kind of spooky as it was. It was kind of atmospheric and spooky, but actually completely not threatening or terrifying at all. It was completely, there was no, there was horror, basically. There's no horror aspect to it.
It's scary though, that game. But
it is. Well, it is now, but as I say,
once
I kind of gone at the time, before I kind of added that, so I kind of knew that I needed this kind of figure, and so I met Hold, which was an actor that was in Contradiction, so basically, I mean, talk about ADHD. I knew that we had that in common. Straight away I contacted Hold and said, would you like to play Jimmy in this game? And Hold said yes. And that was 2017. And so then it took me a few years of working on it before I realized that I did need that whole spooky aspect. There wasn't enough to it with just that happening, the threat happening. So I went back to the studio, and filmed all the ghost scenes and added that element. And then it was, we filmed that in 2019, and then I worked on, that was sort of summer 2019, and I worked on comping it and finishing the game all the way through the end of 2019 and 2020. And so it was just about got it finished by the end of that year. So there.
And now I'm going to come back to this again, Tim. That was a long answer there. And what would it take? What would it take to make a Contradiction sequel? That's what I'm going to. You tried to move away from it there, but I'm coming back to it, Tim.
I don't know how that happened. So I don't know. So what I'm working on at the moment. I'm just going to avoid this question. I just don't know. I don't know how to do it.
No, that's fine.
I would. It's not like I've got any reason not to do it. I just don't know how to do it, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
And
it's the writer's block aspect.
It is, and I kind of, in a way, I'd love to do it, because I kind of think, having done A Dead of Night, which is totally different, I kind of really No, I went back to it recently because it's no longer available on the iPad because Apple basically, because
Mm,
that's all I need to say, isn't it, about that?
yeah.
But so the original way that I coded it was using this package that doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of dead now, so I can't really use that anymore. So I'd have to I was trying to find a new way of doing it without recoding it. It's actually coded in JavaScript, so I have to kind of figure out a shell that I can run it in. And as far as I can tell, there isn't one really that's without significantly recoding it. So at the moment, it's not available on iPad. But my point of saying all this, if I can get back to my point, is that looking at it, going back to it now, and looking at it again, I do have a kind of soft spot for it, because it kind of does, it still
Contradiction,
has a
this
sort of,
is.
yeah,
Or,
for a
yeah.
contradiction, yeah.
So do we.
Well, yeah, so I kind of do. I still. It's not like I've written it off, and I still,
No, okay.
still think. I don't know if do you know what? I have no idea what Rupert thinks about that, or anyone thinks about that. But
Rupert's keen for it, Tim.
oh, is he?
Yes, I'll tell
This
you
is the
that
thing I'm
now.
not spoken to.
If you need
Well,
me to be the kind of go-between, I'm happy to.
yeah. I kind of think. Do you know what though? I kind of think the problem is that I'm only motivated to do these things if I can take control of it and
Yeah.
feel like I'm doing something really. I think I can't. What I've discovered over the years, and this is probably ADHD really, is that I'm basically completely useless at working in a group or working with people, and that's not I think that's my failing. I don't think it's I don't think it's a good thing.
Right.
I just think I just can't do it. Every time that happens, what happens is I just end up backing out completely and not doing anything. And I think, if I'm sure Rupert probably would sort of say, "Oh, you could write it, write a sequel." I'm sure you would suggest doing that. But the problem is, I would then end up being just essentially a lackey, wouldn't I? I'd just be the guy putting it all together, which is the least, enjoyable part. The only part I enjoy about it is the writing, really, and not just the writing, but making a product. You're making a thing,
yeah.
that you can enjoy. That I feel like is the thing that I've made. You know what I mean?
Of course. I mean, I think Rupert was very happy to be Jenks, but I think he was, he knows it's your kind of baby, and you
Oh yeah, no,
created it.
Rupert's
So, yeah.
always been like that. Yeah, yeah.
It was
He's
never
always
going to
said
be.
that.
I think he'd come on board if you were making it. I think that's what he was
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. Oh well, I mean, it's like I say, I've not, yeah, certainly not any reason other than just. Well, I mean, there is. I mean, one of the reasons why now I see it a bit differently to how I did until Dead of Night came out, because I think, up until Dead of Night came out, I was sort of still thinking of that as a kind of little game, that would be kind of, hopefully make me some cash sort of thing, but not.
Yeah.
I've never been that fussed about that, to be honest. But what happened was, I've kind of my freelance, because I was freelance for ABF for quite a long time, and that gradually dried up. It's been drying up, over the years, sort of thing. They've got more and more stuff in house now, so I've been getting less and less work from them. And what's happened, fortunately, is this at Dead of Night is enabled me now to actually just do this for a living, so full time. But Contradiction wouldn't, that's the difference. At the Dead of Night outsells Contradiction by about 8-1.
Yeah.
So it's great, So what I'm trying to do right now, this is sounds mercenary, doesn't it? But it's not really.
No, not. I mean,
it's more just practical. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Don't
I've got 2
apologise for
kids
it.
as well. But so what the situation is now is that basically I'm doing a sequel to A Dead of Night.
Yes.
That's what I'm doing right now, and hopefully, if I can just get my act together and get more hours in my day on it, I can hopefully get this out, hopefully within the year.
Okay. Well, as in it will come out this year or within the year?
I don't know. Hopefully, but I just know full well when I say
October, maybe?
I need to double it. Yeah, but if I say it, I can almost guarantee I won't hit that. Yeah. It's going to be October 24, I think.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But you know, I'm trying to do it as much as fast as I can, basically now.
Am I all right to? I was just going to say, you all right to stay for a couple more questions because I know it's been.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Because I do want to ask you a bit more about at Dead of Night. I think we'll put the contradiction to the side now. We've asked,
Okay.
but I
Phew.
mean, yeah, don't worry. Sorry if I kind of grilled you there a little bit, but
No, it's fine.
people want to know. People want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just interested to know, and I will definitely ask about the sequel, but in terms of the first Dead of Night, just interested to know how you did go about filming that, because I mean, playing that game, honestly, one of the most tense games I've played, because you've always got this feeling, and I think part of it is actually the sound.
Yeah.
That does a lot to make you feel like Jimmy is always following you, and you know the different patterns as well. I'm just really interested in knowing how all that was put together. I don't know if that's a bit of a vague question, but I'm just really interested to
Yeah.
know how you created that kind of atmosphere and tenseness.
Instance.
Yes,
It's,
very
it is a
professional
word.
term there.
It's a word now. Um, well, I mean, it was kind of the funny thing is about Dead of Night was that it took me a long time to make simply because I kept stopping because I kind of had ideas and I would try them out and then I'd put it together. For instance, as I say, I kind of shot Hold in 2017 playing Jimmy, and I didn't really know how it was going to fit, so I just filmed loads of coverage, sort of just shots of Jimmy hiding behind corners and ducking and whacking and doing all the things that
Yeah.
Jimmy does, Yeah, exactly. So I kind of had this vague idea of how you would jump out, and how you'd see him down the corridors and stuff. And then I actually spent a lot of the time, I'd say probably half the shoot was things that I never used in the game because they were things like Jimmy walking towards you. So originally I kind of thought you'd see Jimmy coming towards you, because obviously
Okay.
you imagine, if you imagine that situation of being in a hotel, you just imagine the biggest fear, your biggest threat would be turning around and seeing him coming towards you, down the corridor. So that's exactly what I did. And bizarrely, it completely didn't work. It completely destroyed the whole tension.
Yeah.
And also, technically, it was a bit of a mess because this is all video, as you know, it's FMV. So if you see Jimmy coming down the corridor, then what effectively would have to happen is that you would automatically be spun around to face the other direction. And then as you go down that corridor, you could obviously choose to rotate at any point and look back. And so you had to have all the different rotations with Jimmy coming towards you done as
Oh
separate clips,
gosh. Yeah.
And that's how it is, in FMB. It's all lots and lots of little clips of the thing happening. But it just didn't have any tension. And I remember thinking really depressed about it and thinking, this is just not working at all. And so I kind of, after that, more or less gave up with it for probably 6 months or something. I just thought, you know what, this is not happening. I'll just give up. And I kind of gradually came back to it. There was something about it, I kind of enjoyed the general atmosphere of the thing, and you know what I mean? There's something just nice about creating something like that, So I boot it up now and again and think, I'm sure there's something I can do with this, And then it kind of dawned on me that the best bits were always when you didn't know where Jimmy was and when you went past him and he was hiding. And also when you spin round and he's right behind you, these were the most tense bits. And kind of I thought, well, actually, that technically works a lot better because it means you can just carry on walking around the corridors without the video needing to be interrupted, sort of thing. And I can have video clips where you see him. If you go past him and he's hiding, you can see a little glimpse, of him going as you go past. Even though it turned out that there are very few times when you can actually see him because he's always in the dark and it's only about 2 or 3 frames you get to see him, hiding. So it doesn't really work, but he is there.
Yeah.
And so what I'd kind of realized then was that I could play on this idea that kind of Jimmy's character was actually a coward, that he was actually someone that he would never approach you directly, but he would kind of hide in corners and hide around corners and hide in places, and then jump out when you least expected it, And it's actually a lot more frightening, to have that happen. So it was kind of a double thing, So it had this technical advantage, but it also had this, as I say, this advantage that it was more shocking. So I went with that and kind of pursued. The more I pursued that kind of angle, the more it worked really. So that's how the game came about. Really, is that I figured out that it was about pinning down what kind of character he was. Was he aggressive? And the thing is with that, you can still see elements of the original kind of concept in there. So when you're in a room, he comes into a room, and kind of attacks. And so initially I had, you will attack you in the bathroom, for instance. But that was a kind of, it makes more sense in the context of my original idea, which was he would just come and stalk you, essentially, just come and try and find you. So there were bits like that are kind of hangovers from a previous idea that don't quite sit with the idea that he's a coward now, but I don't think anyone really notices that much, do they?
I
At the
don't
end of the
think so,
day.
no.
So no. But that's all these things are just like an evolution, aren't they? Really, I just kind of work on things and evolve them until they make sense. I don't know. Maybe other people. Sorry.
Oh no, go on, finish because I'll go on to the next question. But yeah, sorry.
No,
What?
I was just going to say, well, maybe other people have the sort of grand concept, of what it's going to be like. Well, I never do. I just have a grand atmosphere. To
Yeah.
me, it's like an abstract atmosphere. I know I know whether it feels right or it feels wrong, basically. You know what I mean? And that's all I work on. I don't really have any great end goal in mind. You know what I mean? I just have is this making me feel a certain way or not? I suppose that comes from music. That's how I write music. Is I just have a vague sense of, does this feel right or not? Not really having any great plan for anything. ADHD as well, I guess. But,
Well, I mean, I think that it does work though. I think definitely the atmosphere is the game, so I think it works in that sense. And I think all I was going to say was just with Jimmy is I just found it very interesting playing that game. Is he just feels, and I'm just interested how you went about doing this. He just feels so unpredictable. So it's not like you can say, oh, he's walked past once, now he's going to leave me alone. Like in a lot of games, the enemies are very predictable. They've got a set path, and you go, right, they've gone up this way, so they're going to be away for a while. So now I can go. But with Jimmy, you could be like, oh, he's gone past me, but he might come back again in a moment, or sometimes he won't. So
I think,
yeah.
well, the weird thing about that is that a lot of he does actually move around the building. He moves around the hotel, kind of like a Pac-Man, ghost. He kind of really does just move around, sort of thing like that. All I did was I kind of thought, well, if you make a sound, then he'll come and follow you. So he listens out for you, sort of thing. So if you do make a sound, he will come and that will attract him. Not just calling out, but I think if you are close enough, I kind of based it on, for instance, if you unlock a door and you come out, if he's quite close, and I think it's within so many moves from where you are, then he will hear you because he'll hear the key. So that was the logic behind that, but not always. So I basically always had this random element thrown in. So there is just actually a pure random element to some of his movements. Certainly when you're in a room, whether he kicks open the bathroom door or not is basically random. I think you've got a 1 in 10 chance of that happening.
Okay.
It's simple as that. It's just random, but it doesn't feel random. And I think the weird thing about that is that there is a basic human thing of seeing agency where there isn't any. It's just built into humans, isn't it? You expect things to be more conscious than they really are a lot of the time. You give inanimate objects personality basically, and it's just probably that coupled with the fact that it is FMV. So when you see Jimmy, it's a real. You do get that sense that there's a person there, which maybe you don't quite get with a video, a standard CG character. There's always that part of your brain saying it's just CG. It's not. You know what I mean? And I kind of, I don't know, but it just feels like seeing video makes you connect with a character. It maybe just lights up those parts of your brain that are kind of more aware of, as I say, agency and other people having independent thoughts. You know what I mean? It's kind of a trick, obviously. It's not real, but it just makes it feel like that, doesn't it? So I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's all fake.
Oh, you ruined it for me.
Yeah,
I'll ask. two or three more questions, then I'll let you leave, because I appreciate you staying on a bit. Hings in the chat was just asking, what was your starting point for the writing of the music for At Dead of Night?
Oh, right. So, well, all the music in At Dead of Night is basically just manipulated samples of other things. Bar there's a couple of pieces I actually wrote. One is the Jimmy theme tune, which is like, his stage tune.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which is like it's meant to be like a silly kind of big band thing. I don't know why I went down with that. I think I had the big band thing going. I can't remember. There was there was one of those old ideas that again disappeared in the somewhere, but I kind of kept it for that. There was that, and there was a piece when you completed a ghost story, they kind of fade off into the distance, as if they're kind of being put to rest, as it were. And that there's a little bit of music there, which is more or less just a bit of strings with a little Celeste sort of sound over the top. That was it, really. The rest of it, those are the only bits I actually kind of wrote. Well, I'm lying, actually. There was the drums for the what's it called? The instructions, the tutorial.
Yeah.
So there was that I did write the drums, but all of the sounds over the top of that, and a lot of those are used in the game as well. So, I'd say almost all of the ambient sounds and all the kind of incidental sounds and all those things when Jimmy's coming towards you, and when a ghost disappears or appears, or when you're waking up from being knocked out and all that kind of stuff. All those are basically manipulated samples. So I basically discovered Paul's stretch, which is built into Audacity, and I got lots of different classical pieces and all kinds of. Sorry.
Oh, you're right there, Tim. I don't know if you're still there or if you're. He might be dealing with something. I'll just let him. Thank you, by the way, for everyone putting in your questions. I was looking at the window on the first floor, going to play a part in At Dead of Night. Oh, okay. Yes. I was just wondering what you meant by that, Mischief Pop. But yes, I think I get that. Yeah, feel free. I think we're going to wrap up anyway in about sort of 5 minutes. But if you've got any extra questions, I was going to ask, where was the question from? Magpie, about sharing the same universe. So I'll definitely ask that as well, because that's an interesting one. Let me just check. I hope Tim's all right. We have kept him quite long. 1 second, let me just message him. But yeah, I'd probably, if you've got maybe one more question or something, but I want to ask him a bit more about At Dead of Night, the sequel, if we've got a chance. I'll just check. 1 sec. All okay. And then we'll probably wrap it up, because I've been realising it's probably... Oh, battery died! Oh no! For what? Oh, for his MacBook. Right, give me 1 sec. You'll watch this. I'm here if you want to call again. Great. That's so funny. Let me do that again. All right. Hello?
Hello, how are we going? I didn't hear anything call.
Yes, I think if you're already connected. Sorry, are you all right to continue? Is that okay? Or
Yeah.
is
Right, sorry. Do you know what? I saw that about 10 minutes ago, and I thought, oh, my battery's got 5%. I should do something about that.
Sorry, it's probably because I've kept you longer than you were expecting, maybe. So
no,
sorry
it's just that I've got a crap MacBook. It's very old now. I don't use it much now.
I think you were just talking about, and I will try and wrap this up quite soon, though, because I appreciate you.
I was talking about sound, wasn't I? I was just in the middle of that's what I was going to say. I don't know where I was up to when I got cut off. Then
you'd mentioned about how a lot of it was kind of samples and things. This is where you test if I've actually been listening to you.
Yeah, if you don't sound out.
Yeah.
So no, I was going to say I discovered Paul's stretch, which is like a thing built into Audacity. Yeah, if you know it. And so a lot of those, I just went through loads of classical music and all kinds of strange little pieces I found, and sounds as well, but put everything, basically just blended stuff together that I found to create the ambience, that I was trying to get. Because I kind of realized that like I was getting more, you know, more useful results doing that than I was trying to write something, original. So I kind of, I mean, I kind of manipulated the stuff, I think, enough that I absolutely avoided any copyright claims. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
sure. Yeah.
But it's all the big blend of stuff, So I wouldn't be able now, even now, I wouldn't be able to pick out, what came from where, sort of thing. So, but it was kind of more interesting to do that, because it's kind of more, I could find what I needed more consistently doing that.
Right, I'm going to keep. I'll try and keep these pretty short. Quick one for Magpie Muddle. You can probably answer this pretty quickly. Do Contradiction and At Dead of Night share the same universe? Because you've got this whole scrying element going on.
They share the same creator, which is probably why they share a lot of the same things.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if there are some pictures from this Contradiction, the street in Contradiction in At Dead of Night, actually. So I did have this vague idea that maybe they did, yeah. But I mean, it's who knows, yeah. I mean, certainly scrying in terms of the kind of underlying concepts behind it. Certainly, scrying was something I kind of again, it's a bit annoying really because I kind of had this in the previous, as I said, the first story that I had written I was writing rather for Contradiction. I did have more of that kind of stuff going on, and I think part of the reason I bottled out with that was because it was all a little bit out there, I kind of thought, is this a bit silly really, and should I keep this a bit more, grounded? But then with At Dead of Night, it seemed like that was a lot more, out there anyway. So I kind of went with it. The scrying thing, yeah. So I did borrow a lot of the ideas, certainly.
And I've got to ask you about this because we've been skating all around this. At Dead of Night 2, what can you tell us about it?
So what can I tell you about it? Without it being too much of a spoiler, I kind of basically, I kind of had this idea in the previous at the end of the last game, Jimmy kind of hasn't escaped from, whatever it is that's possessing him, basically. I'm trying to hint at what's going on there.
Yeah.
So, because I kind of had this vague idea that there was a kind of, at that time, when I completed At Dead of Night, even when we filmed it, they say I filmed that in 2017, that sequence, the epilogue sequence. So I kind of knew at that point that, if I was going to make the game, that I'm not going to, there's going to be a potential sequel sort of thing. What happens basically, I would say that the sequel is essentially a kind of both a sequel and a prequel in a way, because it obviously happens after the events of the first game, but it kind of, you go back into the story of what happened before Jimmy became Jimmy, before he was born, actually. So it does try, the kind of, my idea with it is that it will be a sort of big explanation for what's gone on in the first game, essentially,
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll be what Contradiction isn't, which is, it will actually wrap up what's going on.
And are we going to see, is it similar elements then? Is it going to take place at the same place?
Not at the same place, no. So I'm kind of a year into the development now, so I've kind of got all the CG is actually done, it's all finished now, pretty much, with tweaking. So it's the next thing is I just need to hone the script, make sure I know exactly what's going on before I film anything. Basically, that's where I'm up to at the moment. I'm just paranoid about booking studios that cost a fortune, and then screwing something up. So I'm just making sure that I know what I'm doing before I start filming. What was your question?
So
Sorry.
It's not in the same location. What are we going to see some recurring characters?
It is. Yes, Jimmy's there. Yeah. So Jimmy is there, but I'm trying to think whether it's giving too much away, but basically Jimmy is presumed dead at the start of the game, but he isn't.
Okay.
So that's the starting point. Yeah, I'm kind of trying to draw on Maya. I think is going to be a major part as well.
Yeah.
Again, Chloe was very enthusiastic about it recently in an email, so it kind of gave me a bit more. I was starting to think that maybe she didn't want anything to do with it, but yeah. So Chloe's on board with it. Hole is definitely on board with it, 100%. And so yeah, hopefully we'll be shooting very soon. And yeah, you'll have to wait and see. But basically, yeah, it's going to be. I wasn't sure what to do with the sequel initially. So
It's tricky, yeah.
yeah, because I think for the first year after it came out, I was thinking I don't really know what to do. I didn't really feel like doing a sequel after having worked on it for so long.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I kind of needed a year out anyway. But now I think basically, what I've arrived at basically is something quite similar to in terms of gameplay, but I'm hoping that there will be it'll take it to the next level. That's what I'm hoping, in terms of how it plays and how it feels, And now you've got to think that when I did the original game, as I said, and I filmed it without really knowing what I was doing, and I didn't really have a clear idea of where I was going to end up with it. So at least this time around, because I know where I'm going with it, I kind of hopefully will be able to film a lot more stuff, a lot more accurately, and have Jimmy appear in a lot more different, scenarios and situations.
Is Jimmy still going to be kind of the pursuer, or is there going to be an element of that?
No, he's definitely still the pursuer as it is at the moment. Yeah, there are going to be there's a different mechanism for how the ghosts, because it's basically the place is haunted again. That's the idea.
Okay, yeah.
So but there's going to be a different way that works, and hopefully there'll be a lot more ghostly jump scares, basically, as well as Jimmy appearing. Also, yeah, I'm hoping that these ghostly sequences will be a lot more filmic, because I was kind of really limited last time. I had the budget to kind of film each ghost for a day in a studio. There was only so much I could do, really. Hopefully this time round I'll be able to have longer scenes and things will be fleshed out more, and there'll be more to watch and more to do and more interactivity. Basically, more of the above.
More. Good. That's what we like to see. As long as it keeps that sort of atmosphere, then yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, they say that's the main. That's always what drives me, is the atmosphere. So, yeah. If it doesn't fit, I'll ditch it.
Are we going to see anyone from Contradiction in it, or is it all sort of people from At Dead of Night? We'll just say.
Well, it's a whole new bunch of people, really,
apart
from Jimmy and Maya.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, looking forward to it. And you're saying so you've kind of pretty much written it, but obviously the shooting will start at some point.
Yeah, I just need it's getting it. There's one thing writing it, isn't there? And there's one thing making sure it works. And you're going through the detail.
Yeah. I imagine that.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to need a bigger studio this time, I think, and bigger studios cost a lot more money, so I'm a lot more hesitant to start filming until I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Oh wow, really looking forward to it because I loved it Dead of Night. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
I'll end this now. We do ask people who we've got on here for what their favourite chocolate bar is as a little throwaway end question. Tim, what's your favourite chocolate bar?
Twirl.
Any particular reason or?
I don't know. I just always end up buying Twirls. What is the reason? I don't know. I like the Lindt bars. They're quite good. The Lindt chocolate.
Oh yes, bars. I do. Yeah, they're really well. They're quite posh. Yeah, they're nice.
Yeah. Although you do get them in a meal deal at Tesco, so it's all right.
I'll have to check them out, Tim. I didn't know that. Stop,
living a life. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate you coming on. I know it was a bit of a long one, but the thing is, we just got so much to ask you, and there was a lot I wanted to know. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me here
No, yes, in this space.
in this space, this virtual space.
Yeah, and obviously, keep us up to date with everything. I'd love to know, when you've got more details about the sequel and everything later on after it's been filmed. It'd be great to know a bit more too.
Okay, I will do. I'll
All
try and do that. Hold is taking over the social media side of
really?
this. So, because I'm useless at it, yeah. So hopefully we'll get more updates more
Brilliant.
regularly.
Great, good stuff.
Right.
All right, Tim. Thank you once again.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.